She's staying in a lobbying capacity. She's just moving on from CML.
All right, Barbara Bynum, we are live.
Great, thank you. Good morning. It is Monday, July 6th at 10 a.m. and this is the regularly scheduled City Council work session. These work sessions are designed to give Council a time to talk with our city staff about upcoming items that will appear or may appear on future City Council agendas. So there's no voting during work sessions, there's discussion, and there's also no public comment. We save that period for our City Council meetings, but we might invite people to comment on particular agenda items where we seek more information. So with that being said, we'll jump right in because I see everyone is here. And the first item for discussion this morning is the DMEA franchise ballot question. And I will turn it over to Assistant City Manager Ann Morgan-Thaler to tell us more about this.
Well, can I interrupt for just a minute? I don't know if this is the appropriate place. I'm going to recuse myself from this item. There are those that might perceive that I have a conflict of interest, so I will not participate in the discussion or any vote that eventually happens.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Bowman. Okay, thank you. I don't think you need to leave the room or anything. I don't think that's such a, do you think you need to?
Stephen, do I need to leave?
In our conversations yesterday, I was thinking more about when you're going to be voting in a actual meeting. I know what Ann is going to be presenting today, so as long as you're not commenting on it, I don't see an issue, and then you can recuse tomorrow, or when it, actually it's not coming up tomorrow, but when it comes for a vote and any discussion at the actual council meeting, then you can check out at that time.
Okay, thank you, Stephen.
Okay, thank you both. Assistant City Manager Ann Morgan-Thaler.
Thank you very much. This is consideration of alerting the Montrose County Clerk that there will be an item on the upcoming November ballot for the DMEA franchise agreement. There's a memo in the packet that explains the details of this, but I'll summarize. The City of Montrose is currently entered into a franchise agreement with DMEA for electricity provision. And franchise agreements typically outline things like what happens if a company needs to do installation or digging in the right-of-way. Who's responsible for fixing sidewalks in the event that those are dug up and things like that, as well as setting some additional fees for customers to pay for things like that. So this franchise agreement expires next year in 2021. But DMEA is interested in pursuing a renewal of the franchise agreement now so that it would be voted on by the electors of the City of Montrose in November before the expiration of the franchise agreement. And this gives certainty to customers about the terms of the franchise agreement, certainty to City Council, and also certainty to DMEA so that they can start planning for the provision of power and also terms under their new provider, Guzman Energy. So right now, as staff, we're working with DMEA and also outside counsel on the terms of this franchise agreement. But in the meantime, the city does need to tell the county clerk that we'd like to have an item on their ballot for the November election. And so you will not see the specifics of the franchise agreement right now. What you would do is simply agree to put this item on the ballot in November, and that would be done by a resolution. So I'm happy to answer questions today. We don't have DMEA here because we're not talking about, if you don't mind, Councilor Frank, I'll just finish and then, we don't have DMEA here today, so we won't be answering questions that DMEA might want to be a part of about the franchise agreement, but about the process and the timeline is included in the memo. And sorry, I'm finished. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilor Frank?
The only question I had was in our work session packet, we have the ordinance number 1836, the franchise agreement that was agreed upon in 2001. Is the franchise agreement substantially the same, the legal language substantially the same in this document as will be in the future document?
Yes, you'll likely see some changes. We've been working with outside counsel to make sure that as we review this proposed franchise agreement, that we include any standardized and new language that might have changed over the last 20 years that's now a best practice. But it's always been the goal of DMEA and the city to keep the agreement substantially the same as the agreement that's in place right now. And to that end, also in the packet is a memorandum of understanding that the city and DMEA entered into last year. It's non-binding, but it simply does state that both parties had the intent to negotiate in good faith in order to ensure that we entered into a franchise agreement again after this one expires. Thank you.
Councilor Glassbell, did I see you have a question?
Yes. Question I had was, there's a 3% annual gross revenue from the residential sales, and it excludes industrial customers. Do we have any information on whether or not that includes retail or commercial facilities?
Yeah, and I'm sorry, Councilperson Glassbell, I'm not prepared to answer that detailed question, but I'll be sure when we bring the franchise agreement to you for consideration to explain and better understand those details about the terms of the fees and how they apply to different types of customers.
Okay. And Doug, that's one of the paragraphs. I think there's maybe 4 areas that that we as staff and DMEA are actively talking about, and that is one of the subject matters.
I have a question. When we put something on what is essentially the county's ballot in November, we share part of the cost for doing that. Do we have an idea of what this will cost, and are we paying the entire cost, or is DMEA sharing in that cost?
I'm working to get that cost from the county, and our understanding is in times like this, the entity seeking the franchise agreement pays the full cost. And so that's what we are proposing to DMEA as well.
Okay, thank you. Does any council member have any questions about the notice that we're basically giving to put this on the ballot? We're not approving the language of it. We're simply talking about the fact that we're being aware of the fact that it's upcoming, and we'll be voting to put it on a ballot, and voters will then be looking at it. So there's a lot of details still about the actual agreement, but that isn't what we're talking about right now. Councilor Anderson, did I see your hand?
Yeah, so I'm just curious, do we convey the interest of putting this on the ballot now, or will that come before us at a city council meeting in the future? Just the question of putting it on the ballot.
This is to alert the county clerk that we will have an item on the ballot. And then later you will take 2 additional actions. So you'll be reviewing the actual language of the franchise agreement, and then you'll actually approve the language for the ballot language later on this summer. And let me just check that we envision that we would bring the proposed franchise agreement in order for you to determine the ballot language to the August 3rd work session. And then you'd review it at a council meeting on August 18th.
Perfect.
In order
Thank you.
to meet deadlines for the ballot.
Thank you. Any follow-up questions from council? Okay, great. I think Councilor Frank?
Just to be clear, DMEA is on board with the idea of them fronting the cost of all of this. They're included in that conversation. They're aware of that and are in agreement to provide that monetary recompense for that ballot issue to be put on, correct?
Oh, it is one of the parts of negotiation. It's standard industry practice to put a clause in the contract that they are responsible for it. So it is one of the things that I'm expecting that they will do. To DMEA's It is to DMEA's advantage to put it on this ballot because it gets split, the cost gets split by everybody that is putting on an election. So this will be about as cheap of an election as they can have. If it were put on another time, they would have a greater share of the election. And when you're looking at a 20-year agreement at the scale we are, the $10,000 or so that an election costs is pretty small potatoes.
Great. Thank you, everyone. Any further questions? Okay, I don't see any. So we'll move on to our next discussion item, which is item B, the sales and use tax code update. Looks like we are updating our sales and use tax code. So I will turn it over to our finance director, Shani Wittenberg.
And Shani can't make it, so I'm going to present.
Okay, sorry about that. I didn't realize that. So welcome to Erin. Erin, can you help me pronounce your last name?
So I just got married a few weeks ago, so it's Gewertz.
Okay, because I see it's different on the screen in my agenda. So Erin Gewertz, who is not only newly married, but relatively new to the city of Montrose and is our assistant finance director. So welcome to work session. Welcome to the city. And now can you tell us a little about updating our sales and use tax code?
Yeah, thank you. So the goal of the ordinance is to join in on the simplification efforts of the self-collecting home rule cities in Colorado. The ordinance focuses on the economic nexus and marketplace facilitators, and is kind of the result of a coordinated effort with the home rule cities, CML, the business community, and the Department of Revenue to simplify the sales tax process for vendors. With the use of the state single point of remittance portal, it's appropriate for Colorado municipalities to adopt uniform definitions that encompass kind of the marketplace facilitators and the economic nexus. And that kind of allows sellers that don't necessarily have a physical presence in the city, but still have a taxable connection to the city. And this kind of provides the definitions that minimize the complexity and provide clarity to those remitting taxes. And just so you know, economic nexus would allow online and remote retailers with no physical presence in the jurisdiction to collect and remit sales tax. Oh,
great. Is that the end of your presentation? I didn't want to interrupt.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, fantastic. So are we basically looking at kind of a standard industry practice and updating this? This isn't
Correct.
Something unusual. Other home rule cities are doing the same thing in Colorado?
Right, that's correct.
Barbara, can I throw in a couple 2 cents worth here?
Of course.
There's been all sorts of lawsuits, and we still have some tax commission hearings coming up based on what is a nexus with the city for sales tax. So when you purchase something on Amazon or Wayfair, and then it gets delivered to the city, the trucks go over our streets, they use our utilities. You know, how much connection does a company have to have before sales tax can be charged? And with home rule, a lot of online retailers were having hissy fits because how are we supposed to collect sales tax when everybody does it a different way? So what the state agreed for online tax resources is we're going to get a set definition all throughout the state. All online is going to be collected through one point source and distributed back to the home rules. So it is no longer we're taking away the arguments from the online retailers about why they shouldn't be collecting tax for us. So everybody's made this agreement. We will give up a little bit of our home rule to agree on certain definitions. And then the online retailers have agreed that now that they only have to collect for the state and then the locality, and it all goes to one source at the state, and then the state will distribute it to the cities.
Great, thank you for that. Councilor Frank, do you have a question?
So this is basically a simplification and unification of language to make sure it's clear across all jurisdictions, so that there is no hidden agenda by the city of Montrose here to sneak language in or anything weird like that. This is just statewide to make sure that we're clarified and unified on our language, correct?
I see a thumbs up from our city attorney, so it sounds like you explained it correctly.
And I think that came out of a lawsuit out of South Dakota that originally set that up.
Interesting. Okay, I'm seeing some head nodding. So, yep, sounds like that's the case. Questions? Councilor Anderson, is that a question? Is that awesome?
Yeah. So no changes to our tax rate or any impact to our businesses locally here other than to make life a little easier for them, correct?
It will probably even the playing field some because you're getting some of these businesses that have Amazon for quite some time has been collecting city sales tax for us. However, there's other online businesses that have been collecting 2% sales tax for the state, nothing for the city. So you buy the same thing online, it might have been a little bit cheaper because the online retailer wasn't charging city sales tax. Now it should be leveling out the playing field for local businesses because now the online business has to pay the same sales tax. Even though we're not charging more, we'll probably be able to collect more sales tax because we've made it easier for the online businesses to collect. So hopefully places like Etsy's and stuff that I don't think have been collecting city sales tax in the past now will be collecting city sales tax.
Okay, so it's actually a good deal for our local business people downtown and around the city.
I think so.
Yeah, okay.
To the extent that it levels the playing field, I think that's
Sure.
what you mean. Yes.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. And,
Right.
and it doesn't increase any expenses to them.
Right. It doesn't change anything for them. It levels the playing field, so to speak. Further questions from council? Okay. So we'll see this at an upcoming meeting where we will formally agree to it. Is that the plan?
Yes.
Great. Thank you very much. Okay. Moving on to the next item for discussion, item C, which is Smart Start Daycare. I'm going to turn it over to Director of Business Innovation and Tourism, Chelsea Rosti.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I'm just going to mute my video for a moment because I've got a presentation for you. So just give me a second while I share my screen. All right. Are we able to see that?
Yes, thank you very much.
Great. Okay, so this morning I just wanted to bring before you a discussion about Smart Start Daycare. And so a few of you toured the facility a few weeks ago, and the premise of this idea is Gold's Gym here in Montrose is looking to expand their business into the childcare business. And so we're going to talk today about what it's going to take for that expansion and then discuss some potential incentives for that business in order to make it a reality. So we've talked a lot about childcare and the economic development sphere with a lot of our partners and of course internally at the city. We've got Bethany Maher with our community engagement actively working on childcare as an issue within our community. And we know that Montrose County is under what's called a state of emergency for childcare due to some of the recent closures that we've had in the community. So having a private business come to the table wanting to expand their business into this industry is something that is really exciting. And along with doing this, they're going to be creating 11 or more new jobs in the community. These jobs are going to be, not the best paying jobs like some of the ones that we might incentivize, but they're still going to be creating jobs for people in our community. And these are going to be jobs that have benefits, which is not something that's very typical in the childcare industry, at least in this area. And then also there's room to grow there. And all of these jobs, all the professionals that work there will be certified and provided continuing education. This center is going to have 48 childcare spots available when they're operating at full capacity after COVID restrictions have been lifted. They're also going to offer infant spots. So if you're familiar with childcare and some of the issues in that space, what we face is that infant care is a lot more expensive to provide because the ratio of provider to child has to be smaller. Thus, it's not as much of a cash flow type piece of the business. And so when we see a childcare center wanting to offer infant spots, we really want to celebrate that because you know that they're having to take a hit in order to do so. But we also know from an economic development standpoint for working parents, it's very important that they be able to go back to work after having a child. We've also got the adaptive reuse of an underused facility. So right now, a lot of that space in the building is empty and not being used to essentially make money. And so this will allow for that. And then, of course, it's providing a business expansion for Gold's Gym itself. Some things that I really like about this project is because Gold's is a fitness facility, the children are going to be ingrained into that. So they're going to offer things like children's yoga. They're going to offer nutrition classes for kiddos so that they can take that home to their parents and talk about the type of lunches they should be packing and breakfast they should be bringing to school so that they're nutritious. They'll have kids Zumba and a lot of other things. The facility will also have an outdoor play space on the east side that's going to be complete with playground equipment, shade sails, and all safely barriered off with bollards and concrete barriers. So again, and this is not an actual plan of the facility. You can see the plans inside the work session packet, but it will be located at 1840 East Main on the east portion of the Gold's Gym building. It will be ADA accessible, all up to state code standards for childcare facility, and of course include that outdoor play space. The total spend just for the renovation of this project is about $300,000. This doesn't include what they have invested into the building or the staff or anything like that. And all of that is included in the packet as well. It's to be noted that this project is ready to go. It was ready to launch when COVID happened, and they put it on pause because they actually wanted to speak with all of you and gain partnership on the project. And so they're ready to go. They've hired a contractor. They've got their plans drawn up. They're going to get ready to get their building permit and get going on this. And so we're excited to see that start moving forward. And if everything goes well, they'll have the construction completed by fall. And if they're able to get licensed by the state, which typically with this type of project can be the holdup, then they can start accepting students as early as this fall or right near the winter holiday. So the suggested incentive would be $30,000 to be paid directly to the contractor, which is local contractor Kowalski Construction. And typically we pick off things from the project list that we will incentivize, like the site concrete or that type of thing. But since they've already hired a contractor, they've got everything laid out, all of the payments will be going to the contractor for this renovation. We just looked at a flat 10% rate of incentive toward the renovation of this building to provide this great economic development benefit to our community. So it's not so much about the building or the revenue that it'll produce, but more about what it's providing to the community in way of childcare. This is the typical 10% of project costs that we look at a lot of times when we're incentivizing. And we've also been told that the CARES money can be used for this. And so I know the county is examining some plans to do the same thing with this facility and potentially another one. And so it would be really great if we could come together in partnership on this, but either way, to try to help this project get off the ground and help it cash flow even sooner than it's projected to, so that it can remain in our community for years to come. So that is all I have on the presentation point. So I'd be happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Thank you. I have lots of questions. Councilor Frank, I see your hand.
Two questions. First is, if we choose not to incentivize this, will they still proceed with this project?
It is my belief that yes, they will still proceed with the project as they have everything slated out. They spent the money to drop the plans. As I said near the end, I just believe that this helps get the business unit cash flowing sooner and thus hopes get them off the ground and hopefully remaining more economically viable in the community.
And the second question I have, the second part of my question, I should say, is when we talk about that CARES Act money, having walked through the facility and having done the little guided tour, that we saw that it's going to involve a lot of cutting of concrete, a lot of putting in new plumbing and everything to make sure that it has all the restroom facilities necessary for the kids. With the CARES Act money, if we're going to be dipping into that, which I think is a great idea, by the way, if they're going to be working with the county, are we going to partner with the county on that? Or is this going to be, is it kind of double dipping if they're going to be getting CARES money from us and CARES money from the county?
I think that both entities are at liberty to disseminate the money that's been directed to them at their liberty. So if we chose to spend all of the money that had been given to the city of Montrose on outdoor seating, I think that would be fine. But we're trying to work together with the county to leverage even larger investment in projects that we both believe in. So it wouldn't be necessarily double dipping. It would just be both the county and the city saying, yes, we think this is a good use of the CARES money because of some of the issues that we've had with childcare in the community, especially with COVID and school, the school system being closed and all of those type of things. And so it wouldn't be double dipping, but it'd just be more two entities who have received that funding saying we both believe in this and want to put the money toward it. And if anyone understands this differently, please let me know if you want to speak up.
I think that's an excellent explanation, and that really kind of clarifies things so people that are listening understand that this isn't being a manipulative of the system. It's just trying to avail themselves of money that is available right now for these type of projects.
Childcare is a huge issue in our community, and lack of early child care, especially for the youngest kids. And I think we talk a lot about the economy and diversifying our economy and economic development. But I think one of the things that's really going to hold us back as a community is a lack of childcare. And so this is one thing we can do. The city is not going to open a city-run daycare. That's not what we do, but we can help businesses who say they want to. So I think that's a good idea, but I think it needs to be part of a larger conversation with childcare providers in our community. What is holding back more people from opening childcare centers? What is limiting childcare centers from expanding? What are their challenges and how can the city help? Because I think this is a little like putting a Band-Aid on a wound. It's a great start, but I think there's a lot more that we can do. And again, I'll just reiterate, I think childcare is one of the things that's really holding us back from growing our economy. So I'd like to see, and I know I say all that knowing that we are already in conversations with the county. We've talked about it with Sue Hansen. Chelsea's been intimately involved in those meetings. So it isn't like we think that by doing this, we've solved childcare in Montrose and we can move on. I think this is the tip of the iceberg, and we need to have that bigger, broader conversation.
Yes, ma'am, you're actually absolutely right. And just for those listening, there is a task force that is regularly meeting. We have a city employee, Bethany, who sits on that task force. I've attended from time to time. One of the things that the task force has been working on is providing education to in-home providers, so that they can start to provide 4 to 6 spots here and there and just start to fill those up, and then training facilities on accepting CCAP, because a lot of the CCAP children don't have as much access to childcare right now. And so they're sort of taking it from all different sides, but it's also a regulatory issue. And so the city might want to think about how we speak to our legislators about, the legislation that involves childcare, and that's a really big conversation. But you're absolutely right. This is something that will immediately help our working parents and grandparents who need childcare. But there is a larger conversation that needs to happen, probably on a statewide level, if not larger.
Speaking of CCAP, are we requiring, or in exchange for incentives from the city, are we asking or requiring that they meet any kind of metrics in terms of accepting a certain percentage of students who have CCAP, which it's my understanding that's basically vouchers towards child care provided by the state? Because I think that would be something I'd want to consider.
Okay, we haven't made that requirement or put that in as part of this proposal as of yet. They are in conversations with Montrose County about accepting CCAP, and that would definitely be a requirement if they were going to receive money from the county, from the CARES Act money. However, there's a lot that goes into it. And so Sue has been working with them, Sue Hanson, County Commissioner, one-on-one, trying to work with them and ensuring they understand sort of the ins and outs of accepting CCAP, what the benefits and drawbacks might be, and trying to get them really well set up so that if they do decide to accept it, that they will be successful in that endeavor. And so if you'd like to make that a requirement, we can certainly make that consideration, but at this time we have not added that as part of the incentive requirement.
I recognize I don't actually know enough to know what I'd be asking for. Like, I'd be saying, I think it's important that you offer childcare at an affordable rate. And that I know there's a program called CCAP, but beyond that, I don't know if saying, I think 10% of your students should have, spots should be available to CCAP. I don't really know what I'm asking of them when I say that. So it sounds good, but I think I'd want to know more before I just said, we should do that. Because I don't know what that means necessarily on their end. But I feel like in exchange for getting something from the city, I don't know. It's worth talking about more.
I think we did that with the child care facility on North Hillcrest. I believe that when we did work with them, and I think we were a pass-through on a grant, they were required to have so many low-income families too.
Just for a clarification, that we would give the same consideration to any daycare or childcare facility that's seeking an expansion, that this isn't a specifically, oh my gosh, we really like this one group. If any group in Montrose, any facility in Montrose wants to undergo an expansion, would we give them the same consideration and the same ability to apply for money from the state and from the city?
At this time, because we have the CARES Act money, saying that's money from the state or the federal government, sure. But in general, let's just say these were normal times and we didn't have CARES Act money, of course we would. Any business wanting to expand and provide some sort of benefit to our economic base, which in this case is providing childcare for our workforce, we would definitely look at that expansion for consideration for incentives. So absolutely. Also, before I go to you, Councilman Anderson, just wanted to note, Bill was sending me a message here, City Manager Bill Bell, just talking about how the county's really looking at this from a standpoint of the social service aspect with CCAP and those vouchers for the families who may not be able to afford the regular rate of childcare. But we at the city were trying to look at it from a market rate for our workforce to be able to just have a space for their children to attend. And so sort of those two different pieces and why we were trying to work together to make this even a greater deal for a private business, which you may or may not know is pretty rare to come to the table and say, hey, we want to open a childcare facility. That's not something that we've had a lot of experience with here in Montrose County in my tenure. Councilman Anderson, sorry about that.
That's okay. No, first of all, thank you and thanks to Bethany for working on this, because I agree with our mayor that this is just a critical part of economic development. And I wanted to ask one clarification. In our packet, there's a letter from Bryce Berry, and at the end of it, he indicates a $75,000 number. And I wondered if the $30,000 you were talking about is in lieu of that.
Yes. I just put the request before you for the typical 10% of incentives that we look to provide. I think that if we went to the full 75% or 75,000, it would be a little bit outside of the scope of what we typically do for other businesses. And you as council could make the decision that you think that this deserves that large of an investment, especially because of the things that it's adding for our workforce and those type of things. But yeah, I just dropped it down to the typical 10% to make it a little more palatable to yourselves and the taxpayers.
Great. Okay. Thank you very much.
Again, short of the city opening daycare, I think this is something we can do to provide literally more daycare spots in our community. And I think that's important. And we're not going to open daycare. I didn't mean that to sound like we were working on that. Okay, any further comments from council or questions? I don't see any, so we'll go on to the next item, which is item number D, the Unrind Outlot Division of Property. And I will turn it over to our city engineer, Scott Murphy, for the information.
Thank you, Mayor. And I think Greg was also bringing in David Reed, who's, you guys know David Reed's law office here, who's been working with the Unrinds on their side of this thing. And also Trina Unrind, they just joined us as panelists. So welcome and thank you guys for joining us. So this project is one we've been working on. First started talking about at the end of last year to do kind of a public-private partnership between the city and the Unrind family to accomplish two things. One is to help them. They're looking to divide that large outlot A amongst the family. And then long-term for us, we're looking to secure the rights of way for the extensions of Ogden Road and Rio Grande. And so this is essentially kind of the culmination of that work. I'll switch over to screen share here so we can look at some of the maps as I dive into this. It's got a lot of detail on it, so I'm going to dive pretty deep into the weeds because that's kind of my thing. But if I get too deep, let me know. Or if you have any questions as we go along, please let me know. So you guys, can you see the parcel map here?
Yes.
Awesome.
Yes.
So the Unrind property, initially it was this entire outer boundary here shown when they annexed into the city. So they annexed back in 2002. And the catalyst for that was the Home Depot project coming online. So with Home Depot, they dedicated Ogden Road, improved the frontage, created some of these lots here, improved the signal at Ogden, and then left the remainder of this property as an outlot. So when that was all divided, there was declaration of covenants that outlined their need to put in the signal and improve Ogden. A lot of those things have been done. And then it just said that the outlot A will remain agricultural. And then whenever it develops, it needs to develop to city standards. So that's the history on this. That all took place in 2002. On our side of things, the city has, in our capital plans and comprehensive plan, long-term envisioned the extension of Rio Grande. This is a little bit off the map here, but at the north end, this is the Stover's Corner. So Rio Grande comes down and right now just dumps right back out onto East Oak Grove and back onto Townsend. So because of that, South Townsend, so south of East Oak Grove Road, that's our heaviest traffic in town, upwards of 27,000 vehicles per day. They're on that stretch of town right now. Long term, we do need this belt route. We're approaching a tipping point of capacity on Townsend Avenue, so we do need to be planning for the extensions of creating belt routes around town. So the first loop out is Rio Grande, so the extension of Westside Arterial. So you have essentially all the way from Colorado Outdoors, extending all the way to Rio Grande, all the way down, coming off at the East Oak Grove corner here, and then running down to River Landing. So if you notice, the signal down by Target at River Landing is named Rio Grande Avenue, and that was for this purpose. That long term, we do envision those to connect and take some of that traffic congestion and give people alternate routes to Townsend Avenue. On the east side, and that kind of becomes the Hillcrest corridor, and with this Woodgate realignment, kind of helps create a belt route on the eastern side. Also with that is long-term plans for Ogden Road to extend. I think these are a little longer range vision, but is on the plan that ultimately Ogden Road would extend west and go over the Uncompahgre River and then up to Hogback and up and over at some point. I don't know if I'll see that one in my career, but it's always good to have the plans in place so that we can be set up and seize opportunities to make sure that these right-of-ways are preserved and that they can be made to work. So over the last several years, a couple other pieces of this puzzle have come into play. With this black line here on this map is the new Connect Trail. So with that, we acquired through a land swap all of the Adamson property here. We acquired a portion of the Mitchell property here. And then annexation that just recently came in. This was previously secured, but it just formalized it a little more. Also looking for potential development on this property here. And through that, we were able to secure the trail right of way as well as the Rio Grande and Ogden through this property. So we've had a lot of great opportunities, a lot of great progress recently. This is kind of the next piece of the puzzle, was the Unrind family here on their outlot. So they came to us looking to parse up this outlot amongst the family. By our typical subdivision process, if they were to do that, that would mean a full-blown subdivision. So they would build all of the streets, all of the infrastructure, all the utilities, drainage, things of that sort. And that process is set up for, like a good example is River Landing. They're looking to full-on develop that. They have a couple of large anchor tenants meaning to come in. They need to build the infrastructure because, Target's going to land right behind them. In this case, that wasn't really their intent. They're looking to divide this up so they can split it amongst the family and then make some parcels that would be potentially ripe to sell. And then at that point, look at developing those further. But again, our subdivision process isn't really set up for that. And it's difficult to build all that infrastructure on speculation when there is no end user at this point. Knowing that we have the large community benefit for us to secure this right of way, we floated the idea of kind of handling this as a public-private partnership where we would take care of the surveying, do a couple of utility stubs that we would have to do anyway, as construction of Rio Grande. Do this as an official act of the city in exchange for dedication of these rights of way. And then maybe I'll just speak quickly on how we typically do get rights of way. So, if we were to go in here and say we want to build Rio Grande and get this right of way secured tomorrow, we would pay market value, by the square foot for that property. So it's really a timing thing. If this were to develop, just like when Home Depot developed, they dedicated and built Ogden Road because they needed it to serve the development. So if our project predates development, usually we're buying right of way and paying market price for it. If the development needs that road and that right of way to do it, and they beat us to it, that is favorable. Usually they end up dedicating that right of way free of charge. However, we have no control over the timeline. So in those kind of cases, we have to wait for development to occur in order for us to secure the rights of way and or build the road. Then on commercial developments, we often partner with the roads and utilities to try and help support economic growth. So that's kind of how we got to the concept. Once we had a concept, we entered into a memorandum of understanding with the Unrind family with the help of David Reed's office. And what this essentially laid out was the framework of kind of, if we go about doing our portions of the deal, what would you guys do on their side also? That is included with this packet, and I can kind of dive into that quickly, just so you guys are aware of what we have agreed to do. The reason for setting up an MOU is just to kind of get it in writing of that, we both intend to do our part and create the framework for the plat to go through. So in general terms, we agreed to take care of the survey and the platting costs. We've done a lot of survey work in this area for all these other projects, so it was kind of logical for us to do that since we've already done a lot of the legwork. We did agree to terminate the existing annexation agreement, and I'll go into the details of that here. And then we did also agree to, let me show you, we built the new trunk. This is the Unrind property sounds familiar. That's because we just recently put the trunk sewer line through down here to get rid of a couple of our lift stations. So that if we ever were to build the road and so they wouldn't have to dig it up in the future, we agreed to add a sewer stub coming out from the right of way, so that if these property developer, once that happens, they have something to easily tie on to. That's about a $25,000 commitment that would happen after signing of the plat. So essentially after everything's fully secured. So to this point, the only financial obligation we do have is, or we've incurred, is the work we've spent on the platting so far. And then we did also agree to a couple sewer capacity fee credits, cap credits essentially, at the value of, so 3 of them at $3,889 each, and those would be incurred in the future. So none of that's been expended yet. And then we agreed that, the land can continue to be used as agricultural land in its current use until the time that the roadway project does come through. At that point, we would culvert across any ditch crossings and things of that sort, so as we don't impede any of their irrigation functionality. And that's pretty typical of projects. A good example is the South Hillcrest extension. When we put that road down through all those farm fields, we put new infrastructure both sides so that we don't end up drying up any of the farm fields.
Yeah, I'm losing your audio. I don't know if it's just me or if it's everybody else, but could you repeat that last part?
Every time you look away from your screen, it loses your audio.
Ooh. Do I need to start completely over? What parts?
No. Yeah, just the last part, you said, it's agricultural. And so similar to the Hillcrest extension, we'd run culverts so they could keep doing agricultural under a road if we built a road and they still wanted agriculture. And then after that, I didn't hear you.
Yeah, I think I might have just elaborate a little further on that point that we have to, and even by law, we have to we can't interfere with any farmland stuff such that a field would be dried up by a road embankment going across it.
Okay.
And about that, I will speak louder and closer to my speaker. So on the annexation agreement, so this is the original annexation agreement from 2002. Most of these obligations, these are pretty typical of the larger subdivisions. They lay out who's obligated for what. And most of these obligations have been met. So a lot of it ties around the signal at Ogden Road, and that you need to put in sewer and utility connections, things of that sort, with any future development. So eliminating this doesn't really change anything from a development standpoint. So our code, a lot of these development or annexation agreements are somewhat redundant in that our code requires full development. If you need to construct all infrastructure necessary to support your development. So, and again, it's a timing thing. Sometimes if the city beats them to it, great. If they really need it, they'll often build, their road frontage in front of their business in order to support their business. Or like I said before, the city will sometimes partner and, help them construct infrastructure improvements in the name of economic development. So they're not just giving them cash, but actually, building infrastructure like streetlights, things of that sort that have mutual benefit just beyond that development and are also beneficial to our economy. So it's not uncommon that we terminate annexation agreements, once conditions have changed or projects have happened that make them more or less obsolete. So we didn't have any problem doing that or committing to that on this one. As part of this deal, just to kind of keep it clean for the future. So, with that being gone, it just leaves the obligation for road improvements and infrastructure open-ended. So we're not saying we will build Rio Grande. We're not saying we'll build all of any of the sewer or utilities. And they're not saying they explicitly will either. It's open-ended so that it can be determined on a case-by-case basis. If you get a question, Dave.
Yeah, one of the things we had discussed putting into here was a recreation easement for that river access. Is that being incorporated in part of this?
So a lot of that's covered now with, so the reason the right-of-way is 100 feet through here, so long-term, the Connect Trail will probably have an underpass or an overpass on Adamson property. Would continue down this side, and this right-of-way is wide enough that you can have a a 10 to 15 foot separated rec trail from the roadway, both grade separated and horizontally. And then the Uncompahgre River buffer zone preserves, some of this property worked out really well. Depends on where you're at, but there's a lot of wetlands down here anyway. So a lot of this property, or some of this property right along immediately adjacent to the river is undevelopable. There's the Uncompahgre River buffer zone through there. And then this is all the property that the city acquired back before my time. And so we don't have formal access across that specifically, knowing that, if we work out, if they want to integrate development with the river, that could be worked out with that development. But we do have great access, both sides on city property. And then with this new addition here, we also secured that rec trail easement so that the trail can veer off of the road and go along the river down through this, what was Trudell property, and then ultimately connect to the sidewalk down here along River Landing, make that system kind of contiguous. Does that make sense? So the actual plat itself, so this is the document that would be approved if you guys wanted to consider it at the next work session or the next regular council meeting. And essentially it creates lots kind of parsing up between various members of the family. There's notes on here that any development, future development of these lots would need to meet city subdivision regulations and infrastructure requirements. So they're legal lots right now. And then again, as development occurs on a case-by-case basis, it's worked out what that would look like from the infrastructure side of things. A lot of drainage easements and general irrigation easements kind of set up so that, this guy doesn't develop and blocks off their access or utility corridor or anything like that. So set it up pretty modular and flexible to kind of just work depending on how all the various timings of development and the city's road project work out. And then after that, this creates the boundaries, so the city would sign it, it would get recorded. And at that point, we own the right of way, and then the city amongst themselves would take care of parsing up what they do on their side with the.
You're cutting out again, Scott. The city would what?
So the city would, once this is recorded, the city would sign this document. Once that document is recorded, we essentially own the right of way at that point, and these lots are created, and then the family amongst themselves would then parse up their land amongst the family. It's kind of how that process would go. Right.
Okay. What formal thing are we voting on? And is it one vote, or are we doing multiple? Does this require us to consider multiple things? So can we talk about that?
Yeah. So the formal action would be approval of the division of property and signing that. The other commitments are handled at staff level. So they're all within spending authorities. You'd probably see a budget line for that $25,000 sewer construction to get that out of the road. And again, that's something we would do when Rio Grande was constructed anyway. It's just doing that now instead of later. So that's it's really the only formal act would be approval of this plat.
Okay, thank you.
Then anything to add, David or Trina? Hearing nothing.
I don't hear them. Let me make sure that they don't want to comment and are mute. Maybe, Scott, you can stop sharing your screen, and that way I can see everyone a little better and not miss a raised hand. So Trina Unrein is here, and David Reed. They're both muted, but they can unmute themselves if they wish to talk. Or, I'll unmute you guys just in case you're trying to unmute. So Trina Unrein, you're now unmuted, and David Reed. I cannot unmute him. Oh, I cannot unmute him. Do either of you have a comment? Okay, I don't see any. Fellow counselors, does anyone have a comment or a question for Scott Murphy? Okay, seeing none, it sounds like we have discussed that item. Okay, we'll move on to our next item, which is item E, Sunset Mesa tank color. And again, that goes to City Engineer Scott Murphy for discussion.
Thank you, Mayor. I will share again. So just a reminder for anyone new to council, this project's been going on through the design phase for about year and a half now, maybe even more like 2 years. This is the tank we have planned for Sunset Mesa up east of the ball fields. So these are the baseball fields here. This is looking towards the east. The city has an existing water tank below grade right here that has reached the end of its service life. It's being below grade. It was built high enough, well, probably not high enough back in the day, but it was less of an issue when water demands were a lot lower and the city was smaller. But now we reached a point where we need to put a standpipe style tank up on the top of Sunset Mesa. And this is what that would look like upon completion, pretty similar style to this. Ultimately, the water master plan calls out for 2 of these. We're just constructing the first one. Actually hope to get it out to bid this week and to award and start construction sometime in August. The tank itself would have the Montrose logo on the top, and which can be a good thing or a bad thing. There's 3 choices for colors. In this it's a specialized coating, and so there's only several colors available. We did have the color swatches down at City Council, or at by your mailboxes for you to take a look at over the last couple of weeks. And so there's the 3 options that were out there was tank white, which is almost like a bluish white. Depending on how your monitor works, these are going to show up very differently. So it's really hard to get a feel for those through the monitor, but gives you a rough idea. Warm sun, which was almost a yellowish tan, and then cloud, which shows up a little darker here, but it's kind of a really light tan, almost white. So from the majority of council, our recommendation was this cloud color. It wasn't, the idea was the tank white shows dirt pretty bad. And from talking to the tank designers of their experience with it, is it can end up looking dingy over time. Kind of our thought was to have something that just blends in. We don't want it to be bold and really stand out. We also don't want it to look too white or bright and dingy either. So we felt that this cloud color was the best that accomplished that. And the majority of council seemed to be in support of this one, with warm sun as number 2. And then nobody was too excited about boring white. I think even Barbara renamed it boring white. So I think no formal action here, just kind of generally looking to keep you in the loop on this project as it moves forward, making sure we have consensus that we're okay with the recommended color.
Thank you very much. Does anyone on council have questions about the tank color? Councilor Frank?
So these are kind of our 3 options, or the 2 sort of tans and the one really boring white. Were there other color options available that might have blended into our scenery a little better? Because with a height,
so these are the 3 that they presented as. So I think there's like the blues and some of the other ones. We expressed to them that we wanted a natural palette to kind of try and blend in, and this is the 3 they came back with that work for this application.
As opposed to painting it like the city logo, like a maroon color that and
the logo will still be red. Yep.
Right. But I mean, we never wanted to paint the tank red. I mean, that was early on, we talked about keeping it really neutral so that it would be as least obtrusive as possible. So I'm sure that comes in other colors. It might come in bright red, but we kind of eliminated that a year ago.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. So these were the choices available within that kind of natural palette that we were asking for. Yep.
Well, the only thing I was looking at was possibility of, I recognize where we are, but did they not bring any greens or forest tones at all available?
They are. We didn't ask them. I've seen some pictures of greens and they look, so like the greens and the blues end up looking pretty cheesy. They don't blend in very well from our experience, because we looked at a lot of them to try and kind of figure out where we're at and where we want to start. And I would kind of recommend even the very light greens. You almost look like, I don't know, describe it like plastic or just kind of chintzy, I would say.
Gotcha. Good answer. Thanks.
Any other questions or comments from council? I don't see any. Thank you very much, Scott Murphy, for presenting that project. We won't even be voting on that, right? You just wanted to share with us the kind of because you showed us all those paint chips. Okay.
Yep.
Great.
Essentially just seeking consensus. Yep.
Thanks. Okay. Next on our discussion items, F, contract award recommendation for the CMGC, which is Construction Manager General Contractor for the Police Department building. And I'll turn it over to Public Works Manager Jim Scheid.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor and Council. So yeah, you said it well. I have an award recommendation for the Construction Manager and General Contractor for the new Police Department building. This is a very important selection, and this contractor will play a critical role in this project moving forward, and will definitely be a very important part of our city's team. And so Dynamic Project Management is our owner's rep. They are on the call with us today. They have facilitated this entire selection process for us and basically put the entire package together and ready to present. So I'm going to hand it over to them and let them kind of talk through the process and how we came to this selection. And then we'll, between the two of us, be happy to answer any questions when they're done. So I see Riley on the call, and I believe Colleen may be on the call as well. They're both with Dynamic. They've been very helpful and can probably speak to this much better than I can. So I'm going to hand it over to them and we'll go from there. I don't hear
Colleen, I can see you talking, but I can't hear you.
Nope. We don't even have an ability to unmute you. Do you have a microphone on your computer?
It doesn't appear you connected with the mic.
You might need to call us in.
Call
in on the phone. Okay.
What is your, is your number ending in 0312? Is that you, Colleen?
Yep, it sounds like I was just unmuted. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'll start again. Thanks, City Council. It's good to see everybody again. We haven't been in front of you for a couple of months. We have made some really great progress on the fire department project. And as Jim said, we have a recommendation here for you today on our general contractor. I'll run through real quick kind of how we went through the process, and then definitely can open up to any questions that you might have of the process or of the selection or anything else on all things construction. When we first started on the project, the executive committee wanted to move forward with what we call a Cmgc delivery method. There's several different methods of delivery in construction projects, and Cmgc, as the mayor noted, is Construction Manager General Contractor. It's also sometimes called CMAR, which is Construction Manager at Risk. And this delivery system enables us to bring on board a general contractor early in the design process that really becomes part of the team. They help us with pre-construction, estimating services. They work with the design team to look over constructability of various details to make it potentially easier or more cost-effective on different construction methods. And then they also help us with value engineering, which is ways that we look at to appropriately keep the value of something within the project, but maybe for less cost. And this delivery method has become more popular, I'd say, over the last 10 years, even in public processes. The other delivery method you might be more familiar with is hard bid, what we call, and that's when we get all the way through design and we send out the documents to be bid, and then we have those public bid openings, and usually the lowest qualified bidder wins. We call that hard bid. And then finally, design build is another delivery method that we see where the design team and the contractor are on the same team, and the owner only holds one contract with the design builder. In hard bid, you would have a contract with your architect and your contractor, and same with CMGC. We'll have a contract directly with the selected architect of record, and we'll also hold a contract directly with this construction manager, which is the contract that you have in your packet. Our process was two parts. We did a qualifications part and then a proposal portion. So the qualifications came in, and you can see in your memo, we received 8 responses, and the selection committee used a rubric to score those responses, and we identified a short list of 3 candidates that the selection committee wanted to bring into interview. And from the interview portion, we asked those shortlisted candidates I think it was about the evening before the interview day, to provide us with fees related to their general conditions, their percents that they would charge for their overhead and profit and insurance, and percentage of markup that they would charge on any future change orders. We asked for pre-construction fees and contract comments. The general conditions are all of those things that the general contractor controls. So it's their project management staff, their superintendent staff, their job site trailer, computers, all of those things that they would provide and wouldn't sub out to other subcontractors. And the theory with CMGC is that the sub numbers are going to be the sub numbers, but we can competitively procure based on general conditions. And so we received that and the other items that we requested ahead of the interview so we could look at a comparison. And when we get to the point where we will fully amend the contract into a guaranteed maximum price, they will be held to what they provided us on for their interviews, for their general conditions and their markups. So that's no longer something that can be a variable. It's fixed with Shaw, in this case with Shaw. After we had interviews, we had a combination where the selection committee was together in Montrose, along with Riley and Ray Scott. He's also our colleague at Dynamic. And then we had the contractors in the same room generally, and they were on Zoom. So it was a little bit of a hybrid where one team was on one side of the camera and the other team was on the other side of the camera, but it seemed to work well versus having every individual in a different room. And at the end of those interviews, the selection committee recommended moving forward with Shaw Construction. The contract at this time, and you probably saw in the last paragraph in the memo, is really only for pre-construction fees, which is all of the estimating services they do up front. And Shaw proposed a $0 pre-construction fee. So this contract is essentially for $0 at the time, but eventually this could be rolled into a construction contract. You guys do have the ability to, once we get through design, to go out and hard bid the drawings, but that's pretty rare in this. I've never seen it happen, I guess I would say, that you still have that option if for some reason you think you're going to maybe get a better price on the market. But generally we start forming the team now and we move forward into construction. So over time, you'll see a change order amendment for that guaranteed maximum price once we get through the complete design with Shaw. And then ultimately, when Shaw moves into construction, they bill us for the cost of the work. So they send in every single receipt for every single sub, every single thing that they buy, up to that guaranteed maximum price. So it's a cost of the work to a guaranteed maximum price contract. And we are definitely looking forward to getting started with Shaw Construction. They do a lot of work on the Western Slope. I'm sure most of you are familiar with them, or at least have seen their signs or their trucks around. So they also had a few locals who live in Montrose who will be working on our project team. So we felt that that was really important. And that's kind of an overview of the contract and where we are right now with the contractor. So what questions do you have of us?
Council, anyone have a question? so far on this process? Okay. I see a lot of head shaking, which means the explanation must have been very thorough because I don't see any questions. Great. Thank you, everybody. Jim, do you have any additional comments or?
No, I was just going to say this will come to council in 2 weeks for approval, and that's it.
Great. Okay. Thank you very much. Yes, Councilor Anderson.
Hey, I guess I have one question. In the packet, there is this enormous AIA document. In fact, there's several of them. Is that just part of the whole process of picking Shaw and the relationship you build with them in order to have them do their job? I honestly didn't read it, but I scanned all through it, and it kind of was overwhelming, and I don't understand the purpose it serves because I'm not a construction guy. But anyway, maybe you could just explain it real briefly.
Yeah, definitely. So there's 2 different contracts there, and we actually did. We have read all of that, if you can imagine that. There was several points that we negotiated with Shaw, and we came to an agreement. And so that is just formalizing our agreement. That's the contract for general conditions and for construction. And Colleen may be able to explain more and better explain the details of that contract. She wrote most of that, I believe. So it's a construction contract that we would have with any contractor that just happens to be an AIA format that we have edited to fit our need.
I see. Okay.
It's every little detail, like they're required to clean up each day or each week. They can only park here. It's everything that you would consider under a 2-year construction project. All of the different rules.
Looked very
every base.
I thought for a really simple explanation.
That's great. Good enough. Thanks.
Okay. I don't see any other questions from council. So thanks you to Colleen and to Riley for joining us. It's a little easier than coming to Montrose when we have our meetings online, but we appreciate you being here nonetheless. So thank you very much. Okay, nothing else on that.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we will go on. The next item, G, is the Victim Assistant Law Enforcement, or VAIL, grant resolution. I will turn it over to Police Chief Blaine Hall for discussion.
Hi, City Council. So I come to you this morning to present the Victims Assistant Law Enforcement grant. It consists of $28,000. The City of Montrose is requesting permission from City Council to move forward with this grant. What specifically this grant does is it helps fund a portion, really approximately half of Chantel Bainbridge's salary. And Chantel is our victims advocate for the Montrose Police Department, and really does an excellent job at serving our victims in our community in multiple ways. One of the newest ways being the recent addition of our support animal, Apple. So this is something that we come to you every year, and I think we've been doing it for, oh gosh, multiple years. And so other than that, if you have any questions which I can answer, then I'm happy to do so.
Thank you very much. Any questions?
This is through the 7th Judicial District, isn't it?
Correct, Doug. So this is one of 2 grants that the police department requests every year. The other is the a VOCA grant, which is another victims grant, but it's distributed by the federal government, which pays for the other half of Chantel's salary. So this grant is funded through really impact fees from essentially findings of guilt for suspects and then fees that they have to pay as part of their criminal restitution. So that's how this grant is funded.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Okay, seeing none, we'll look forward to seeing that on our official meeting. Thank you very much, Chief Hall.
Thank you.
Next on our agenda is General City Council discussion. So I see, Doug, you unmuted yourself. Do you want to kick it off? Do you have something?
I just wanted to say what a fine job the police department's doing, and I did enjoy all of the hearts and the items that were posted on the outside and inside your building. Great job.
Councilor Frank.
Just one quick question for Chief Hall. We had discussed doing a video, sort of a tutorial video and explanation for the community on the body cameras and the availability and how they'll be used. What's the progress on that video? Have we gotten any progress on that?
Yep. So William Woody has interviewed me and then has also interviewed Juan Haro, who's the technical specialist for our body-worn cameras. I don't know how close he is to completing that video. I've been out on vacation this last week, but it's one of my plans to check in with him this week and see where he is on that. But I'm sure he's probably close. I know, like I said, the interviews for that portion of it have already been completed.
Great, thank you.
We'll be out this week.
What was that?
It's Chelsea. The video will be out this week. It's about complete. We're just waiting on timing with some things going on with social media. So it should be released this week.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you.
Councilor Anderson, Councilor Bowman, anything? Councilor Anderson.
Yeah, I just wanted to see if this is possible to ask Chelsea and Ann, whoever it's appropriate to ask, if maybe tomorrow at the end of the meeting when we do the PIO, is that what it's called? I think so. If we could have kind of an update on the status of COVID here in Montrose. I know that you guys are working with the county, and it'd be nice just to get a public update where we're at and, whatever you think's appropriate. But I would appreciate that. So I wanted to give you a heads up so that you'll be prepared. That's all I have. Thank you.
Just a question. Oh, go ahead, Mayor.
I was just going to say the county is doing their weekly, is now doing their updates once a week on Tuesday evening. So perhaps we could take that update that the county is providing and share it publicly at our meeting. It's usually out between 5 and 6, I believe, on Tuesday. Councilor Frank?
Kind of expanding on Councilor Anderson's statement, it might be nice for the public for us to just kind of go over what things are currently allowed under our variants, because there's a lot of confusion. Bar owners we're shut down bars, but we are allowing bars to stay open under the pre-mandated guidelines. So it might be nice for us to go through a couple of those things that are allowed under our variants so that the public knows what things are and are not allowed.
We should maybe consider inviting the county, because really the city doesn't have a variance. The county has a variance. And so I just want to make sure we don't make things more confusing by start talking from the city, like, oh, this is allowed or this isn't allowed, because it really is the county's call on all that. And I don't want to confuse the messaging, because I think we've been really clear so far that the county is the Department of Public Health and the county commissioners are the Public Health Board. And as such, they're the ones making all these decisions. So while I think that the city's done a great job sharing the county's messaging, I don't want to start introducing new confusion that there's separate rules for the city. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I agree with that, but I just think there's a lot of confusion about what even the Montrose County variance allows currently. Because with the change of the state orders constantly, It's very confusing, very muddy, and I just think some clarity for all of our citizens would be really in order.
Right. Let's look at inviting the county perhaps to give us an update, or why don't our communications team talk to the county's communication team on how we can partner? Because it's a little like parents. If my husband tells my kids they're allowed to do something or not do something, I'll tell my teenagers, you whatever your dad said, you heard him. And if I start saying, well, this is how I heard it, I really don't want to cause confusion. And also the county has the ability to change their mind. And I don't necessarily want people saying, well, I heard city council on Tuesday and they said this was allowed. And I just want to be really careful because I think we've had an excellent relationship with the county. We have coordinated for our community really well. Our law enforcement have been working together. Our leadership teams have been working together. And I don't want to come out now and start at city council meetings telling people what they can and can't do according to the county's rules.
Yeah,
so I hear you, but I'm gonna have to defer and talk to Bill Bell and Ann Morgan-Thaler and our communications team on how we can help our community understand, but not make things more confusing.
That's my point. I want to make sure that we have that ability just to say, this is what currently is allowed all across Montrose County. I don't want this to be a mom said, dad said thing. I want it to be, this is what the county public health department says, and it's allowed everywhere in Montrose County.
Thank you. Councilor Bowman. Okay. My only comment really is I've like every summer, the mayor receives an email asking if our community would like to participate in the mayor's water challenge. And I have I've seen former mayors do that on behalf of the city and working with our utilities manager. And it's a little bit of a social media campaign, if nothing else, where we encourage our citizens to be water wise. And so I think we'll be doing that again, and I can bring more formal information. Does that make sense to you, David Rees?
Yes, that's fine. We can coordinate that.
Okay, great. Thank you. There was nothing else specific, I don't think, on my radar. Okay. Any other comments from council before I ask city staff? Okay, you always have the right to jump in if you think of something else. So I'll turn it over to staff, and rather than go around the room, we'll just take whoever wants to update us on their department or their goings on. That would be fantastic. Going once, going twice. Maybe everyone feels like we got the necessary information. Ann Morgan-Thaler, I saw a hand.
We're all trying not to jump in front of one another, but I'll kick it off. And if anyone else would like to go, that's great too. Council, I'd like you to know and the public to know that as of this morning, our city hall is open to the public. So we've been open for about a month, offering services in person at our visitor center. And now if members of the public would like to come and pay a utility bill in person or ask a question in person, they'll come to City Hall instead. Our visitor center is also open to the public, but our customer service technicians are back here at their typical desks working in City Hall. And all information about our hours and operations can be found at cityofmontrose.org/COVID-19. We're updating information about our divisions. We're still encouraging people to make appointments with our divisions when possible. So for example, if you need to talk with Archie about a building permit, it's best if you call him on the phone or send him an email so that he can schedule some time with you. And that way he can meet with you out in outside in our Centennial Plaza, or schedule time in one of our larger meeting rooms to accommodate social distancing in order to meet with people, for example. We also have some walk-in hours. We know that people aren't always available or able to schedule time, so we have walk-in hours for divisions too. So we're trying to make accommodations to keep everyone safe and accommodate social distancing and these new norms that we're getting adjusted to, and also be very available to the public. So I just wanted to let you know about that change effective today.
Thank you very much for that update from the city manager's office. Chief Hall.
Everyone again, I just wanted to just say thank you. Last week, we had a pretty grisly situation out on Sarah E. Lane that required the use of both the city and the county's SWAT team eventually to clear the house. There were 2 deceased individuals found inside, and the case is still under investigation. But I just wanted to say that a lot of equipment and technology was used on that particular scene, not only to clear the residents, but just through the investigation. And none of that really could have been possible without 2A. So once again, thank you to our citizens, to our city council, to our city management team for really supporting that, getting behind that, because on that particular day, it absolutely was a benefit to our officers and helped keep them safe as we made entry into that home. So thank you.
Great, thank you for that. Jim Shai, do you have any additional public works information for us?
Maybe just to expand a little bit on what Ann said about opening to the public. Public Works is open by appointment only still moving forward. Just to limit the number of people in our building, we really don't have the space to keep everybody safely separated. So we're doing appointment only. If anybody is wanting to participate in the expanded recycling program with tires or TVs or refrigerators, that sort of thing, they can call Public Works and set up an appointment, and we are happy to accommodate. Our green waste is still open all day long across the street from the Public Works shop over on Park in San Juan, and our open lot there. So they don't need to come in the Public Works yard to use that green waste drop site. So that's really the only update from Public Works. Is we've been operating that way now for a few weeks. It's been working well. So I think we're going to continue with that for at least the foreseeable future. It's working well. So only other update, I think we talked about it at the last meeting, but our pump track down at Cerise Park is completed and open. There's some touch-up stuff going on this week there, but it is anybody could go right on it now. So it's completed for the most part and pretty exciting. So I hope all of you get to go enjoy it.
Great, thank you. How did the free dump, I mean, it's what do we call it? The day you can bring in your trash that you can't normally bring in. And we do it for a Friday and a Saturday. How did that go?
It went well. That's the spring cleanup event, and it went well. We did our best to keep everybody separated there as well. We did a normal event, but kind of slowed down people as they came in and didn't allow as many vehicles in there at the same time to try to keep everybody separated. And it was actually a little bit slower than we've seen in the past. And maybe because we had it later in the year. Typically we do it toward the beginning of May, and this year was late June by the time we did it. So it was a little slower than normal. Our overall volume was a little bit lower than last year. But it was a steady stream of people. I don't have the stats in front of me. I can't remember our total tonnage, but it's still impressive. I mean, we hauled off a lot of trash all day long. So it was still a good event. But I would say down probably 10% from last year.
Okay. Great.
Dave?
Thank you.
Yeah, I showed up at 7:00. The staff was very helpful, very safe, and just kudos because it was an extremely well-run event. Everybody was very, very helpful, very, very friendly. It was just a real benefit, I think, to the city of Montrose. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. We try hard to make it enjoyable for everybody, and it is kind of a fun event. You know, it is kind of neat to do. Once a year, it's a lot of our public works staff is there, so it's kind of a huge group effort, but it's enjoyable.
Great. Thank you very much. Chelsea Ross, did you have any additional information that you want to share with us? Maybe you can update us on the tourism, if the visitor center is reopening, and if so, when?
Yes, the visitor center opened as of this morning at 9 a.m. It will be open from 9 a.m. to 5 every day aside from Sunday moving forward, and then we'll move to winter hours later in the year. We're working on getting all of our visitor guides back out into the community. So if you've seen some of our stands and they were empty, we now have an employee who will be doing distribution, so that'll be taken care of. And then we're also working with the town of Uray and the town of Ridgeway on some cooperative marketing just for sort of the drive-in tourist, hopefully mostly from the region of the Front Range, but maybe surrounding states as well. So people who may be driving to the area and want to experience things in each of our locations will be marketing that to those type of visitors. So we're looking forward to seeing sort of what that looks like and how that all rolls out slowly and safely. Guests are required to wear a mask inside of the visitor center in addition to all the other city facilities, as I think Ann might have mentioned. And actually tomorrow or Wednesday, we're going to be starting discussions for our next visitor guide. So that's something exciting, I think, that we all look forward to. We've had an evergreen model, but we think it's time for a refresh. So we'll be beginning with that. And then 2 quick staffing changes that I might want to mention. Kate Adams has been promoted to the guest service and DART coordinator. So she's now working with the visitor center and still retaining some of her duties with DART. And then Caitlin Love has resigned and is taking a new position in Grand Junction. And so we'll be filling her role here soon for that tourism piece.
Great. Thank you very much. Any legal updates from our legal department? I don't.
Not at this time.
Great. Thank you very much. David Brees, any additional utilities information? You're still muted. Still muted. Here, I'm going to unmute you, David. I can't unmute you. There we go. David, we'll come back to you because you're still muted and we can't hear you. You have no updates. Okay, I'm going to think that means you have no updates. Okay, Lisa Del Piccolo, any updates from the city clerk's office?
I do have an update, Mayor Bynum. Excuse me. We are recruiting a planning commissioner. So if anyone is interested in serving on the planning commission, they can contact the city clerk's office for application details. Our deadline is Monday, July 20th at the end of the business day. And then council will interview applicants at the first work session in August.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
And then I think I saw Greg's story. Do you have an update for us?
Yes, Madam Mayor. The IT team is working on completing the upgrades to the council chambers to help facilitate, I guess what we'll call a hybrid Zoom council meetings. And we should be ready to go for the next one, the 19th and 20th of this month. So we appreciate the extra 2 weeks to iron the kinks out. Thank you.
Great, thanks. Yeah, I think we need to navigate a hybrid model so that we can continue to keep people safe, but also to be able to start resuming some in-person meeting functions. So thank you very much for all work from IT department. Bill Bell, I think you unmuted yourself, so I'm wondering if you wanted to chime in from your phone. Maybe not.
I didn't, but if you want me to add anything, I would just say that I just emailed out to see if the county would give an update tomorrow night. So I copied everybody on that. And then just want to say thanks to the staff for holding everything together. They're doing a great job, and council as well answering. I'm just checking emails, and there's been a lot of chatter over the last couple of weeks. So thanks to everyone, and I'm looking forward to getting back. And we are opening up. We're really excited about getting the visitor center, as Chelsea just mentioned, up and going. And we want to let the community know that our economy is starting to pick up quickly. Lots of development going on, and we're going to see a lot more presentations over the next few meetings with City Council, similar to the Gold's Gym daycare discussion today. We'll be seeing several more of those types of discussions take place probably over the next 4 to 5 meetings. And we've been getting a lot of questions about the URA board for the Urban Renewal Authority. We'll be holding a meeting soon and start moving those projects forward now that people are ready to get going after the delay due to COVID. So a lot of exciting things going on in Montrose, and now we just have to get back into our fast-paced routine. And
great, thank you very much. Kendall Kramer, I don't want to put you on the spot, but if you have any updates about grant writing, please feel free to unmute yourself and chime in. Same with Scott Murphy. If there's additional city engineer information, you can go after Kendall. Kendall, hi.
Hi, how are you? Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, City Council. Don't really have too many updates. I'm sure everybody saw that we received the Fishing is Fun grant for the river restoration project, which was $284,000. So really excited about that project. I think we've got it about halfway covered through grants. So that's really awesome. So looking forward to it. Other than that, I don't think I have anything else to report, but thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Scott Murphy?
Let's give a couple of quick project updates. So as you may have seen, West Main has been coated and is ready to go. There's one last piece. There's a curbing on the top of the wall that's getting redone. So that'll get coated once that gets patched up, and we have to let it cure for a while before we can coat it. So, but for the most part, West Main is done. All the landscaping and railing is done. So just some small touch-up stuff. Cerro is 100% complete, except for that valve sitting in California that we ordered 9 months ago now. The CEO of that company, which is it's Waterman Gate, it's a pretty big company. They're now involved. We've gone as high as we possibly can to try and get that resolved, and still waiting on it. There's 2 manufacturers in the whole country, and we're stuck with the one. So, but still hope of getting some water in the reservoir this year. So, we're out there working with them daily to try and get something going. But and then the next big project that'll be coming, I mentioned during the tank color item, is the tank. So that'll be coming out to bid soon, and you'd probably likely be seeing that sometime in August for approval.
Great, thank you very much for that update. I think I got everyone. Did council think of anything in the interim period? Any last minute items? Otherwise, if not, we do have a DART board meeting tomorrow afternoon. And Chelsea told me there's a few just items for discussion. It won't be too long. And we have a city council meeting tomorrow evening. And that's our schedule for the next day and a half. So I think we're done today. I'm stalling a little just to make sure no one's chiming in. I think we're good to go. Thank you everyone for coming to our Zoom meeting. Appreciate it. And I'll see you all later. Thank you very much. Goodbye.